Hello everyone, welcome back to Keybeam Blog. This is Dan Sfera. I'm here with Angel Bayari. He is the CEO and founder of Keybeam. And last episode, we talked about a lot of things. You brought on the project manager for clinical research for Keybeam, and we got into this topic of the digital twin, which I think is fascinating. I don't think people even know about this. And what we're seeing now, just in its infancy, I think could be the way of the future just in 10 years. So, Angel, welcome. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thanks to you, Dan. Thanks for the interview, and it's a pleasure, as always.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, let's get into the digital twin. I mean, the reason I find it interesting is sponsors are always looking for a way to make the trials more efficient.
Yes.
Obviously, sometimes that means spending more money initially in order to spend less later.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that with risk-based monitoring. We're seeing that with remote monitoring, with all the big data, the analytics that they're using. But what are we seeing as far as... So we found a way to maybe make the monitoring aspects easier and more efficient, and maybe at some point save some costs. But you're saying with the digital twin, we may be able to do the trials completely virtual in
Yes.
10 years from now without even using actual human beings as participants.
Yeah.
And how does this work? Because this is fascinating, and I think this will be the end of our industry as we know it.
Yeah, at least it will be a disruptive change, right? I think that nowadays, to be honest, we are quite far from that. But change, happens so fast that probably we can say that we will have it in 10 years, and suddenly there is a new paper, a new significant progress, and that accelerates everything, right?
Yeah.
Like the smartphone, the tablets, and so that in the end it seems like they were here for 100 years ago, and it was only less than 10 years actually, right?
Right. Yeah. You
Yeah.
almost can't imagine life without it, and it's only been a decade ago. So that's a good point.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So I guess that nowadays we are inspired. I've always thought that there is one machine which is the most difficult to study, the most difficult to engineer, the most difficult to learn, to simulate, and this is the human body, right? The human body is the most complex machine in the world. We have all together in the same space problems of fluids, problems of structures. We have principles of aerospace engineering. We have principles of civil engineering. We have principles of electronics, because cells, in the end, they are using electric signals. So we have, a lot of engineering stuff happening inside the human body. And it is true that in engineering we have always had an approach which is based on the simulation. So I'm an engineer, I have colleagues working in other sectors, right? And when they are designing a new bridge, when they are designing a new house, when they are designing a new engine for the airplanes, they always, create like the virtual thing, right? And especially in the airspace sector, this has been extensively applied. So the digital twin is not a new thing. Digital twin is something that engineers know quite well, especially from the airspace field. In fact, I think one of the most efficient domains where the digital twin is happening is the engine design, the airplane engine design and manufacturing. Because, as you know, the engine is a critical part of an airplane, right? no, it cannot fail. So
Right.
it is a very complex system, and you need a digital twin in order to be able to simulate different conditions regarding temperatures, pressure, birds going in of the engine, and these things happening. So in the end, you need to be able to model what's happening there. But what is important to know is even this, the complete virtual simulation has not substituted at 100% the real experiments. For example, we still have the wind tunnels, right, for testing the engines, although they are at a lower scale. But in the end, I would say that if the digital twin is a very important part for the engine or the airplane industry, the aviation industry, for example, the digital twin in healthcare, it's still not existing, right? So I think that we have to make it grow to arrive to a percentage where we are close to aviation, let's say, right?
Fantastic.
And for that, we need to first solve some problems at engineering level inside the human body. And these engineering problems can be grouped within what we know as multi-scale modeling. And what is multi-scale modeling? So multi-scale modeling is that we need to understand first how the human body is working at different scales. So we have to go from the molecular scale, passing through the cellular scale, so how molecules interact each other, how molecules interact with cells, how cells interact each other also, forming tissues, what are the alterations in tissues, how these tissues are creating organs, what are the alterations of these tissues when they are just have some cells that have aberrations in the DNA or in the molecules, and then there are changes that produce a problem at an organ level, like cancer, and then in the end, how this is affecting all the human body, right? So we need to know how the interactions with the human body from different drugs, for example, can modify the overall tissue, the overall organ, the overall human body by the introduction of a specific molecule that starts to interact with a membrane or interact with the inner part of a cell, so we can have different mechanisms at a membrane level or inside the cell. So I think we have to explore a lot this domain, the multi-scale modeling, in order to be able to provide information of the interaction of molecules and the environment with the cells and the organs of the human body, right?
Yeah.
And for that, we need to add a lot of information to those models. Information from imaging, information from genetics, information from more specific from molecular biology, from pathology, age of the patient, race, gender, whatever, right? So we need to aggregate a significant amount of information.
Angel, we seem to be, everything in clinical research is slow, but technology as a whole is increasing so rapidly. Maybe we're not that far away from this. Who's working on these kind of things, and is it? I know from the sponsor level, they're working on molecular models and molecular imaging. A lot of the stuff you mentioned, they're already doing. But how far are we from? First of all, when you create a digital twin, you have to, if you want to simulate a study, you've got to create a digital twin of somebody who has a particular condition, right? It's one thing to create a healthy digital twin. It's another thing to create a digital twin who has Alzheimer's and maybe has some hypertension and some COPD, right? Like, you can almost argue there is no digital twin for everybody, and if there is, it's just one person. But then how do you simulate a study across hundreds of people?
Yeah, I think that nowadays, the digital twin, it's clear that as we see it in the future, is like a virtual physiological human, right? That we will have, for example, in a file or whatever. But it is more probable that the very first attempts of in silico modeling, because this in the end is about modeling in the computers, right, in silico. So the first attempts of these digital twins, I am quite sure that we will be speaking about tumor digital twins or organ digital twins. So we will not start by the whole human body, right? So I envisage a progressive digital twin creation, right? Because now we are quite good at several parts. We have groups that are quite good, for example, in studying cell migration. We have people that are quite good studying tissue interactions. We have people studying a lot of the molecular interactions of drugs with cells. But there has been no collaborative work to create an overall digital twin, right? So I guess that we have several groups. Everyone is working at different scales.
Everybody wants this. I mean, it would clearly be
Yeah.
I mean, patient recruitment's the most difficult challenge in any study. It's how do you get the patients, and the longer we don't get a patient in is $1 million a day, US dollars, for a clinical study. So if you've got 50 sites and they all said they're going to enroll 10 patients in 3 months, but they actually enroll 10 patients in 1 year, you know, that's 9 months, $1 million a day. I mean, it adds up really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what we have to do now is to focus the digital twin or the in silico models to solve two challenges. One, obviously, as you were mentioning, is the patient recruiting. It is clear that nowadays we might be recruiting patients in clinical trials not properly because they are not suitable for the specific drug, right? If you have a drug that is acting at a specific molecular pathway, and then you are including a patient because of a disease, imagine Alzheimer's disease, right? You named Alzheimer's. But what if we have several molecular subtypes? What happens if we have patients with a specific genetic alteration? So we should include in the recruitment those patients that are more sensitive to the physiological principle of the drug. And this is an assessment that nowadays is not performed, especially, I mean, it's starting to be performed in cancer clinical trials, that you actually select specific patients with a mutation, right? But it's not a common practice for clinical trials. So we tend to put all patients in a box. This is multiple sclerosis, this is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I do a trial, and then probably we don't see an effectiveness of the treatment because of the recruitment, because of the inclusion of a population that it's not specific enough, right? So digital twin will help us to discover the different phenotypes of the disease and different genotypes of patients. No, I created a kind of scheme that I will publish soon about how I envisage the relationship of patients or of people with their digital twin, right? Because imagine nowadays you have a medical history. This medical history is on a per patient or per hospital based. So unless you go to your hospital and you ask for your data, you don't have your data with you, right? You have to take it from one hospital to take it to another hospital. But I see that we need a digital twin, especially for healthcare, where we can include all our imaging data, all our genetic data, all our blood tests, all the clinical data that our doctors are gathering. We have to take this in a file or maybe store it in the cloud, and this is our medical history or our let's say, digital twin containing all the data that we are accumulating on a daily basis in healthcare, right? So if we do it properly organized, we can feed the digital twin with all the data. So I am quite concerned on creating a standard for the digital twin.
Fantastic. Let's talk about that. So first of all, to differentiate, okay, I got my 23andMe, so I have a digital twin, but it's just my genotype, right?
Yes.
What you're talking about, just to not confuse anyone, is the actual phenotype, the way the molecules are structured in someone's cells, right? The different pathways that their cells undertake, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and that genotype is one thing, but then we have an evolution, right? Some people practice sports, some other not. Some eat, processed food. Others eat healthier. So we need to gather all this information because all this information is highly relevant in order to know the type of diseases that are happening, right? So we need to create a real digital twin that can be upgraded, and I call it, I have a project that we have recently submitted, which is based on the digital twin backup and upgrade, right? So, for example, imagine that we create a healthcare program at every 5 years when you are an adult, right? We cannot do this for young children, but when you are an adult, you can perform an MRI examination every 5 years, and then you can extract all the information and make a backup of your digital twin just as a safe copy of all your data. And I will tell you why, because we can get a benefit. For example, if I have a copy of all my vertebra, of some bones, I can probably 3D print them if I want to get them replaced at some point. So I can do a backup of my copy. I can, I don't know if some of these companies that are able nowadays to make like a backup of all your records.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I mean, this is quite science fiction, but I am quite sure that we will be able to keep our memory safe at some place, and to be able to get it installed again. No, but this is something that it's being under discussion as of now.
Yeah. So as far as digital twin, you almost have to start. I mean, ideally, you would want a digital twin for every person. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
But what will come first is probably groups, like
yes,
within Alzheimer's. Like you said, having subgroups of Alzheimer's. How accurate? How cost effective would this be? Because, for example, you don't know how the drug is going to interact with other parts of the body. That's why we do clinical trials, to see side effects primarily. I mean, we are also looking at efficacy, but we need the entire body to see the side effects, right? And if we're only doing a subset, how would that actually work?
I think that there is the point that one of the main applications of the digital twin will be the evaluation of the toxicity. So the in silico modeling is the evaluation of the drug effectiveness, and the first scale, I think, is the evaluation of the toxicity. So if I have a genotype, if I have the cells, if I have the organ, I will be able to test whether the drug is producing any side effect in the patient or not.
Wow.
This is one of the most relevant concerns. So I think that the key point or the key application of the digital twin and the in silico modeling will not be phase 3, phase 4 studies.
Okay, never.
Because in the end, I think that we need to treat the patients in the end. So we do the trials because we want to launch a new drug, and we have to treat the patients. And the only way to know if this is working or not in the end will be performing effectiveness clinical trial, right, with
Effectiveness.
patients.
So probably
But
the easiest would be to get rid of the phase 1 healthy volunteer study.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that there is a significant amount of money in animal research.
Ah,
So I think that animal research is also a point that we will minimize, because I think that there is a lot of information that we are extracting now from imaging in animals that will be replaced by digital twins simulation. I'm for sure, because nowadays when you have preclinical studies, the focus is how is the liver going, how is the kidney going. So you are studying toxicity, right? And this is something that we are able to model as of now. And I think that also one of the killer applications will be the phase 1 studies also.
yeah, the healthy
Because,
volunteers.
yeah, we will be able to test any kind of toxicity and effect, right? So I think that this is a huge amount of budget for healthcare companies and for pharma companies to try to bring this kind of preclinical and phase 1 trials, even some phase 2 trials, to virtual, right?
Right.
I see a significant amount of money being saved. Yeah.
That would be fantastic. So how far do you think we are from this? I mean, and then what's keeping, because KeepBeam does a lot of things in regards to imaging, and you're
Mm-hmm.
obviously interested in this topic of the digital twin. You're publishing some articles. Are there conferences around this? Or do people talk about this at conferences? You just
Yeah,
came from a couple of conferences this year. We did some interviews with you in San Francisco. Is this a topic or is it too early?
it's too early, maybe, I would say. Actually, what we are doing is we are part of a, I would like to call it a visionaries group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that we are not wrong. I think that we are thinking on the development of medicine and especially IT and engineering. And we are part of the Avicenna Alliance. The Avicenna Alliance is an association of companies and research groups focusing on the promotion of in silico medicine.
Mm.
That means medicine, simulated in computers.
Right.
And we are there mainly with companies working in pharma and clinical trials, companies working in modeling, companies working in also in simulation and analysis like Quibim, and also universities that are focused on
Mm.
the in silico analysis, in multi-scale modeling. And for example, there is a meeting, more or less, uh, annual meeting called the Virtual Physiological Human, right?
Okay.
So we are involved in this kind of initiatives, right?
Wow.
Because we know that this is the way to go. We simply know it.
Yeah. Makes
So
sense. Is it
yeah,
expensive? It must be expensive right now to do this.
actual, actually, it is expensive because you have to put together all the efforts of different research groups. For example, our research group is good in cell migration, right? Very specific topic. Another research group is very good in tissue hydration. Another group, so in the end, we need to put together
Mm-hmm.
the effort of a lot of researchers, right? And
Yeah.
actually, we are doing now, a proposal, and wow, it's significant amount of money, to access research in this. But the first genome was also quite
Yeah. The Human Genome
supposed
Project.
a high economic burden, right?
Right.
And look now, you have the 23andMe.
Right. So, and are you guys applying at the National Institute of Health or somewhere in Europe? Similar agency?
Yes, we are applying. We are applying.
Okay, good.
We are applying to the European Commission.
Okay. Yeah, that must be a process. We probably should talk about that later, about the process of doing that. Now, one thing as we wrap up, it makes sense to me as somebody who's just learning about this concept of the digital twin. It makes sense for me this could be a safety value add to a patient. But here's the challenge. So the problem we have with clinical trial recruitment is really patient awareness and a lack of awareness of clinical research in general. Okay, so that's why patients don't join. To do the digital twin, you still need the permission of human beings to allow you to do this. I mean, you're essentially cloning their phenotype. You need their permission. So we still have the same problem of awareness,
Yes.
right? But if we can pull it off, which is a big if, unless they opt in somehow automatically, you can pre-screen the patient in a phase 2 or phase 3 much easier, because you can almost reduce all risk, or at least most of the risk that we're not looking at now, by doing the simulation on the digital twin first. If they don't have any SAEs, then you can put them in the study, in the real study, and hopefully the same results occur, right?
Well, yeah, this is a deep discussion because actually I think that there is another technology evolution that will make this digital twin become completely available to everyone to get access to the consent from the patient at any moment. And this is obviously, and you may know, blockchain, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
blockchain healthcare will allow us, will change completely the relationship of patient with doctor. And to be honest, I strongly think that it will have a significant impact in what we know as a hospital, in what we know as going to a doctor. So I am sure that blockchain will radically change how we communicate with the doctors, how
Interesting.
we share the information, how we accept to be recruited for a clinical trial. So probably people will not be involved in their own clinical trial in their city. Probably I am a patient in Spain and I want to be involved in a clinical trial of a doctor in Philadelphia. So, I mean, blockchain will, I think that we
Wow.
will disrupt everything. Yeah.
We've got to, that should be the next topic, blockchain and how it relates to all this, because I am very much interested. I do think you're right. The buzz has kind of disappeared with cryptocurrencies taking a plunge, but this has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. This is just the blockchain technology, which
Yes.
sponsors, CROs, technology companies are still discussing. It was one of the big topics at the JPM conference that you were in San Francisco in January. So very interesting. So just in a nutshell, you would be with the blockchain, you'd be able to opt in, not have to worry about the security of your confidential information if you're the patient.
Yes.
And if you're living in Spain, like you said, and you find an interesting study going on in California, you can opt in and send your digital twin to do the study for you, almost like having an avatar, right?
Yes. Or asking about, your problem immediately to any doctor worldwide that you want. So this is me, I have this problem. And probably your doctor will not be in your hospital. Probably your doctor will be whoever in States or wherever, no, in our case. And I think that the business will change significantly because you will have probably doctors that are offering the service through blockchain. Probably we will have doctors not working in a hospital.
Oh,
Probably we
wow.
will have doctors working at home, just making consultancy
Have
to
you heard of any of this happening with
2 million patients. I don't know. Okay.
Have you
But
heard this? Have you heard at all any example of this happening so far?
no,
It's very early.
nowadays, the only thing that we have on this is completely research. Completely
Yeah,
research.
yeah.
Research on the exchange of information, on how the adoption would be performed. That, this depends a lot on the generations, right? I
Yeah.
think that we have to change a complete generation to have a smartphoneized generation of people in order to be able to just send their data to anyone, to be sure that this is not a problem, this is not a risk, and we need to reinforce security. So,
wow.
But I am sure that hospitals will be significantly different in 20 years. We will go only to the hospital for very, very significant stuff, like interventions that, strictly require a surgical room. But for all other stuff, I think that more of it will be performed either at home or through blockchain or teleconsultancy. Yeah.
And it sounds like even your regular doctor's office visit, which I have to do later today, that's going to be pretty soon old-fashioned.
Yeah. I'm
okay.
Sure.
Interesting. Well, we gotta talk about the blockchain again next interview, and then we should do a webinar on this, as it's been a while since we did our webinar. Maybe in May we do a webinar on these two topics combined. When are you publishing your paper? When?
Actually, what we will publish for the moment is a blog article.
Okay.
Because probably this is too immature to become a paper. These are some glimpses, some ideas.
Blog post.
But we already have some schemes on how this would happen. And
maybe we can talk about the blog post as well in the next video. Well, the next video will be blockchain, and then the one after can be the webinar where we combine both of these, the digital twin and the blockchain, because I think it's fascinating how your mind is able to put everything together. Because when you're learning something, you're putting everything into a compartment, but when you're advanced, like you are in this field, everything works together. So that's fascinating, Angel. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening. It's very interesting. You're on the cutting edge of the future here, and let's see what happens. But thank you very much, Angel.
Well, thanks to you, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.
So glad. Thank you.